ECC. And there it is. Both platforms online, and Dick will take it home.
What a game.
Take a victory lap, take a bow, and take the headsets off and start to yell.
Cycling through, back to Blizzago. Oh, pulled the counter twice out, but not gonna find it, and run off Shadow Ball will do the trick. At 0 is all of a sudden up to 78%, make it 90. Another roller doesn't find the mark this time, but a dash attack and forward tilt will only find shield.
Ooh, and now that might just be game. No strong hit, but pop him off the top with the sneakers.
Luddite very aware, I think, of what X-Wing wants to do. Is that's going to be no tech in that situation, and that means that stock is gone. Gray, another string of back airs, and that one will be shut down. They will be able to get back to the ledge, but that's going to be another mistake.
No!
The jump, the up B, and it's not enough. Rinse, repeat from the second.
It looks like we have, is it overkill, a disconnect? Whatever's happening here. Han Solo Burger is just tearing right through them. 3 kill, oh my goodness. They still have so much left to work through. A nice weapon upgrade here. Raze is gonna throw it right back into their face. Look how far Kira's pushed up. Oh. Maybe able to whoa. Joe! This is just what we needed to see from Brooklyn.
But I was going to say, Handy Crackers in the offensive attack, he had such a good size up on that one, but got denied by the defense of Merrimack.
I mean, this is a player that's been peak at 2200.
You know, someone keeps on stealing it, just doing hot laps at this point in time. But regardless of the fact, 15 seconds left here in game number 2. Breakaway chance right here for Bagels. He's going to put this one in.
Hammy Crackers going up.
And welcome to the Esports U broadcast of the evening. I am Tiny Shiny, joined by Jag as the ECC season is starting to wrap up for our final day of competition on the Overwatch side. Jag, we have a matchup here tonight that very well we could see again in the finals.
Absolutely. Honestly, I'm feeling like we're pretty lucky. I feel like we got one of the best matches of the regular season, if not the best matchup here in the East Coast Conference, because like you said, these two teams very well could end up in that grand finals. Both of them coming into this game are undefeated. It's College of Staten Island versus Southern New Hampshire University, Sapphire specifically. I think that's going to be the big thing, is that this is very similar roster that we've seen from this squad in the past, from the school in the past, but it's not the same one that College of Staten Island beat in the fall to become champions of this conference.
Last time these two teams met were in those finals, Jag. I mean, these are teams that have competed at the highest level, yet we are seeing those adjustments come through to those rosters. So is the College of Staten Island, despite winning their previous fall championship with a 4-0, how are they going to fare against a new look from SNHU? That is what we're looking to find out here today. And Jag, these rosters are stacked beyond belief.
Yeah, I think the big thing about College of Staten Island is it might not be the biggest names on the planet. You may know it's not going to be contenders players, but these are collegiate players who have been together for a very long time. And CSI has won so many championships. They're the defending champions, but they've won at least 3 or 4 others in the history of this organization. And the fact that this is a mostly returning roster from last semester, they have 4 of their starters. They still have their captain, Bioactive, who is just insane at any role they play. I've seen them play DPS and support, so that's pretty crazy. But when you look at the other side, there are some names from the path to pro, past and present, that we see here. I mean, Ultimate Web has been a DPS player who's been consistently in contenders, playing for teams like Young and Beautiful, like Noble, like Bermuda in the past. And then you have kind of players that were in Overwatch at the very beginning of its infancy as an esport, like Kresnik, who played on bigger organizations like H2K and Selfless, but those organizations aren't around anymore. They're not in Overwatch specifically, especially. Kresnik has not played like in a very long time. I think he was playing in NECC in 2023, but before that, it was 2017 and Overwatch Contender Season 0. So they have the star power at SNHU, but do they have the same skill level, right? Because, these are players that maybe haven't played in a long time.
Not only are you building that up, but they are also going against Staten Island, a team that has kept all of their same players. Their synergy only has been growing. And with a map such as this, Control to start it off, the center of chaos, that's really it's going to see that start to come into play. Staten Island with more of the Sigma, but it's Bioactive losing. That Tracer duo will be starting out on the DPS in terms of that flexible role position. I mean, after losing the Tracer here, Jag, SNHU, they want to start to push up and move towards this objective.
Yeah, it's going to be a capture for them most likely, but I will say Bioactive back into the sway, so they could be trying to find something on this off angle as this fight really gets going.
Start to find a couple more pickoffs. The big one here, though, has to be Helios. That tank being gone, Cammy has much more space to move and poke about. That's 2 put down into the dirt. Setdowns now stably on that objective, gaining that first capture.
And one thing about Cammy is that, they really like playing this Sigma. They like the Arista from time to time too, but in that finals they played against the other SNHU squad that now goes by Pearl, they were running almost exclusively this Sigma and then a little bit of Arista, but they were the MVP of that series, doing so much damage, doing so much protection, and just absorbing so much potential damage incoming with their abilities. But again, Bioactive falls first.
Has not been getting the better of Ultimate Web. Easily dominating those Tracer duels. You get the one pick, Kitsune Rush just to help top it all off. Helios gets incredibly low in these fights, and that's why you want to use the Kitsune Rush in that manner. Help push your tank on forwards, keep those cooldowns accelerated, and now you have a clean flip.
Yeah, a nice flip after losing the play initially. Only give up 35% and some change. That does cost them the Kitsune Rush, but that's an ultimate that Crazy Cat built up so quickly that it's probably something they'll be able to get back pretty soon. I really want to see Staten Island answer with their own Kitsune Rush here and go aggressively here. The tempo has been great, and they get Helios.
Oh, yeah, Helios got way too far up. I believe that was an environmental kill, as a matter of fact, judging by where that went down. So Staten Island, significant advantage. They're going to want to start pushing this one on forwards. Ultimate Web contesting the point. Couple more percentage gained, and it's just got to be SNHU on the way out.
And I believe twice now it's been a Soundwave elimination from Grip SR has been able to get that elimination onto Helios.
Woo! Has been making this consistent. I mean, Helios is a target right now. That's a pulse bomb to take them straight to the grave. Staten Island are using their ultimates very wisely at the beginning part of this choke. Getting a hold here, Jack, is absolutely brutal to break through.
Yeah, an early pick especially helps you win that fight. It accelerates the time you have already counting on the point. And as more and more goes your way, your ulting is also looking pretty good. You've only used 2 ultimates in the last little bit of time. You gotta be careful though if your Cammy has to run away.
And Cammy able to duck right under into that door. Look at the Kitsune Rush, the visor going through Chongyun though. Very few health to spare, will end up falling. That Rampage from Helios prevented Staten Island from healing, and they had to back off. They didn't get any value out of their Kitsune Rush, so they're forfeiting the space and the objective along with it.
It's not only that, it's that they use every ultimate they have in their bank. I was just saying it's a healthy ult bank. They use 3, none of them find value, and all of a sudden they are on the back foot. Crazy Cat with a Kitsune Rush of their own once again. We saw how devastating it was, but they can't save Helios.
I mean, honestly, Helios is so far up there. It's not difficult for Staten Island just to chuck a boulder in their direction and say goodbye to the Junker Queen. SNHU now on the back foot. The Kitsune Rush bought them some time. Yet the tricky part is going to be contesting that objective. Once this goes back over, you'll have one more opportunity to contest. You have to keep your Ash up in the game, though.
Yeah, I've got to say the Sugar Queen pick, do you think would be very sustainable? Because she can peel off of her Jack and Knife, but so far, she's always the one falling.
And Helios is still alive for now and even manages to grab Manu before the sound barrier hits the ground. That's going to be all the Junker Queen has to say in this fight, though. It's up to the remaining 3 members of their team to make this one count. Staten Island in control. Overtime is burning on down. Cammy healthy as ever. That's a boulder to the face. Kresnik hanging on for dear life, or rather hanging onto the wall for dear life. Managed to stay alive for such a long time that SNHU are about to get their tank back in the battle. Something needs to be done soon, and now it is Kresnik coming up big. Chonyan off the edge. Cammy following suit. Staten Island, they didn't clean up these eliminations in time. SNHU returned to the battle before anything definitive could be done here. Jag, they're managing to stall this out to such a point that it can be winnable. All that's left is the Kiriko.
They're at a huge advantage right now. There even is going to be a commitment of the Kitsune Rush from SNHU just to make sure they get that capture. Just great stalling by this squad from New Hampshire. It shouldn't have been winnable, and yet it was. Now they have still some life here on this first sub-map of the day, but Staten Island, they have a whole ult bank in their back pocket. The question is, can they actually use it to their advantage this time around?
Aggressive push up onto Cammy, who's incredibly low. Sound barrier on out, counteracting the Gravitic Flux. The players got aggressive, yet it's Helios to fall again first. The tank must stay alive. But now New Hampshire, the player that they need the most, is no longer there. Cammy has free control of the space in this map. Chongyun attempting to go on the cleanup. Will get one before falling back down. The overtime wick burning once more. Can anyone from New Hampshire manage to get there? Yes, there is a final touch in, and Crazy Cat grabbing an elimination onto the Lucio player leaves this wide open. These characters incredibly fast on the side of New Hampshire. Cammy goes down. There's no way they're gonna do this a second time, Jack, surely!
They can't keep getting away with this. Every time they're down, they're not out. It felt like a bit of an overcommitment from Staten Island. You saw their Lucio go very deep. Now they're going to have to come up with a sound barrier to maybe even get a touch. Do they even get there in time? It looks like they barely do, but it's going to be so difficult for them to win this.
I mean, Chongyun will manage to touch a Cho in. Ripser, it was a CC sponge on the way to the objective. SNHU against all odds and a rough start to this series have managed to stabilize and win these longer fights. And at the end of the day, Jack, it's enough to drag them back from the brink to take round 1 of Sanctum.
What a comeback. Oh my gosh. I can't believe how this, like, the story of this submap on its own was absolutely bonkers. They lose the first capture despite getting the first elimination. They constantly have to stall out these fights, play these faster heroes just to run around the side of Staten Island, but they get it done. Staten Island doesn't have enough focus fire. They don't have enough dedication to one target to get it done on that first fight that they were able to stall on the side of Southern New Hampshire. And then for that second one where they are in the winning driver's seat for Staten Island, they just overcommit. They send their Lucio out for this final eliminations. They can't get it done there. And here we are, SNHU up 1-0, going here onto our second submap of Nepal. And now we're going to see a little bit of a swap. Staten Island, they are going to
Okay.
go on to the Ramontra this time around, as well as a Baptiste.
They're gonna have the Rom, the Baptiste, and interestingly enough, in New Hampshire, they're running a Reaper of their own. It's gonna be heavy frontal damage versus a little bit more of this poke. Staten Island are wanting to set up, both teams meeting on the objective. Commanding Shout out early in its Ultima Whip, putting a Bioactive down once more. The Tracer duel, I don't think I've seen it once where Bioactive has come out to win this, and honestly, that set SNHU up incredibly well for several of these engagements that they've taken, and is even going to win them the first fight. Uh-oh, Helios.
Oh, but Helios again!
Helios again!
Might
And
not
you can
matter,
get
though.
it. Yeah, you're fine.
The capture still goes the way of SNHU, and it's really hard to play this matchup, honestly, if you're Bioactive. Ultimate Web, I put this in the notes that we've been looking at for today. Like, I put Tracer / TPS players. Ultimate Web is a Tracer player at heart. That's what they are known for in contenders. That's like one of their best, obviously, as we can see from how they've played so far. And this is a Tracer meta. Tracer got buffed with those health changes. You're looking at OWCS and Tracers being played all the time with the Doomfist. A little bit different here, what we're seeing mostly, but it's just such a good pick. Pulse not going to connect, though.
It's not going to do too much. Fox positioning, though. Allowing this poke damage to come in, you do that DPS passive, that's the recall, focused out of your Tracer counterparts. First time Staten Island now moving towards the objective. Immortality field on down though. Look at that ultimate gank from SNHU. Those clutch points about to go out. That's 4 hits on the Rampage. Reaction is there, plenty of health to spare, yet the later sound barrier usually is the one to come out on top, and in this case it is. That's new. Main force of healing down. Staten Island must stabilize quickly. They want a chance to move through the fight, and getting Helios and Kresnik is just the way to start it out. They need to show they can win one of these longer engagements, and this appears to be that time indeed. I mean, this is such a late ultimate to commit from both Brian and a Crazy Cat. You're gonna want those back, Jag.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, just maybe the Death Blossom could have turned things around there, but you saw there the Ramontra can absorb so much damage when they're in their Nemesis form with the block, so it doesn't really do much at the end of the day. It is gonna lead to some swaps, so Osira now gonna be going to the Cassidy, looking for that Magnetic Grenade to hinder someone, maybe specifically the Tracer, so they can't move around, but they're gonna try to run in with that Pulse Bomb from Ultimate Wet, but it does not find anything.
Just yet, and SNHU, they essentially ult dumped in the previous fight. Staten Island understand that, so they're okay with using what minimal tools they need, yet it's 2
Hello?
DPS off the map. I have to assume that's a reset after losing the tank, just no ult charge given, but
Yeah.
still a big yikes.
It's smart. No, it's just something I was not expecting there. I think a lot of the time you see players will just fight that out until the end, but smart awareness there. Don't give up any more ultimate charge, like you said, because there's no actual elimination that was given to any player on the side of Staten Island. They don't get anything from that. And SNHU, like you said, resets really quickly and already back into the swing of things.
Moving around towards the outside of the objective. I like to see them fighting on even ground instead of trying to move their way up to meet the height. So Mortality field forced on out. Commanding Shout. Helios wants to make a mark. Changyun in danger. Post gun moving out of the way. It's a boop onto the Lucio. Sound barrier though still is going to hit the ground. Staten Island using it more to stabilize. They want to push forward, and it's Helios down again. SNHU continuously losing their tank this early is hurting their overall sustainability and tempo in these fights.
And this is so interesting too, because I was watching a VOD from SNHU just from like a day ago, 2 days ago, and they were not running this comp at all. They were running a lot more Sigma specifically in Winston, so the fact that they're running this Junker Queen, it doesn't seem to be working out for them too well. This fight is kind of going back and forth, but overall this series has been way closer than they wanted it to be.
And they're still balling it out. Even after they lost several players to Staten Island in recent engagement, they're sticking it out. You have the Rampage on through. I just hope it's the only ultimates that we can see throughout the fight, and it might very well be their last. Cammy has to go down here and now. It's overtime for Staten Island once again. There's no one left to contest, so SNHU ideally getting a flip back over once this Tracer is properly disposed of and setting up for one final engagement.
Talk about expensive fights, or using ultimates when you don't need to, overcommitting there, and I thought for a second maybe SNHU went a little bit too deep using the Kitsune Rush, and was something that seemed like it was done and dusted, but Staten Island then answered with their own amplification matrix when they only have 1 or 2 members alive, so ultimates just going by the wayside. SNHU now actually in the driver's seat, and this is final fight territory.
And this is an aggressive Deadeye. The speed boost, the boom! Oh, that's rips are thrown out into into the open, nothing you can do in the eye of the Cowboy SNHU. They must answer back. It's overtime on both sides, but Staten Island, they're down, they're hurting. Not having Noob here is going to be the final nail in the coffin. Ultima Whip is essentially unstoppable at this point. I mean, my goodness, SNHU, despite a rocky start, it's Ultima Whip on the cleanup, sealing the deal. Final flip coming on over. You're gonna try to get Noob onto the touch, but you're nowhere near fast enough to break through 3 players. And that's gonna be New Hampshire taking map 1.
It was very, very close, though, New Hampshire.
Wow.
Maybe expecting a bit of an easier time, you know, with how hyped up this roster has been in this league. Possibly looking like, on paper at least, the best team in the ECC. But Staten Island, they're the champs for a reason. They're undefeated for a reason. And while they can't pull out the victory here on Nepal, 99-99 on both points, you gotta think if they made a few different decisions across that map, maybe, just maybe, they could have pulled that out. I'm looking at that Ant Matrix that was committed in a lost fight before that last fight. If they had that ultimate, that could have been such a game changer, having all that extra healing, that extra damage potential with the Baptiste ultimate. Could have been what got them across the finish line, but instead they use it when they don't need to, when they already lost a fight. And because of that, they end up, well, not just because of that, but as a part of some of the things that happened, they do end up losing that first map. But the good news for them is they kept it very close, and I feel like overall this series could be just like that.
It actually really is looking to be that way. When you look back at Control, it wasn't really a 2-0 when you think about it. Do not look at that score and think, oh, 2-0, this is going to be a sweep. It's absolutely not. If this does not go more than 3 maps, I am going to be shocked. Something has gone severely wrong on the side of CSI. So we're expecting them to have that comeback. But as you mentioned, Jag, they're struggling to close out a lot of these fights. If you notice, there's a big correlation between the longer these battles go and the probability for SNHU winning these fights, right? Their ability to plan later on into the game, they have this faster return time, they're able to stay on the same page. That's what's been setting them apart. And at a point like Control, where if you have the objective under lock, the longer these fights go, it's better for you at the end of the day. So when you're having a lot of those issues, yes, they're going to be amplified on Control, but because of these teams being on such a similar level of competition, it allows you to have this back and forth and start to look at the smallest errors that you're making, because those tiniest errors that you may not even think about are the ones that can lose you maps.
Absolutely. It's not necessarily about outplaying your opponent. It might just be about making less mistakes. And both teams definitely had, you know, their time to shine in the lowlights, unfortunately. Both teams had some overcommitments, some positioning that wasn't so great. But at the end of the day, it was just a little bit less of that from Southern New Hampshire. Just a big part of why they're able to take that first map. But the good news for CSI is, even if they lose that, this is actually their first map lost across all of ECC. You've got to mention that. Both teams had not dropped a map throughout their entirety of their runs, but we do know what the next map is going to be. It's CSI's pick, and I didn't actually hear what it was. There it is. It's Blizzard World is what's going to be next, so they got to choose out of all of the maps from Hybrid, and we're going to see exactly how dominant Ultima Web was on that last map. You said he was dominant. I was saying he was the player to watch. 34 eliminations over 2 sub-maps. Only 2. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's not acceptable from a Tracer player. I mean, oh my God. And you can't underemphasize that. Ultima Web, if there was one gap that we had that was very noticeable, right? It was the gap between Ultima Web and Bion on those Tracers, right? And I still couldn't think of a single moment where we saw BioNTech winning a one-on-one duel. And that's going to be a problem. If one Tracer is starting to come away and you take out the Tracer that is in your path, that is preventing you from destroying your opponent's backline, with how powerful that hero is with the current patch, Jag, that is a significant problem that you're going to have to iron out. Even if you're not winning the 1v1s, don't take them. Have that support, have that communication, and create a plan to counter out what we're seeing from Ultima, because right now it's opening the door for SNHU.
Not only that, but you have other options. You don't have to take this mirror matchup with the Tracer if you're not winning out. And like you said, I also don't think that, you know, sometimes it's a little bit like one-sided where someone's winning a little bit more than the other, but there's at least a few eliminations on the side of the person who's losing that more often than not. I don't think we saw one time that Ultima Web lost that duel, unfortunately. So maybe you go for a counterplay instead of trying to go for that mirror match. If you could go for a Sombra, wait for that Tracer to engage, go for the hack and the virus, and you can usually, cut them down pretty quickly. You could try to go for more of a long-range attempt, just play longer-range characters, which could work very well on a map like Blizzard World, where there's so much high ground and so many great sight lines for a sniper like a Hanzo, an Ashe, a Widowmaker, potentially. There's a lot of things that Staten Island could pull out. It does look like they're swapping things up, though. As I said before, Bioactive is known to swap on to the support from time to time, usually playing the Illaari or the Ana. Phobic going to be coming in now, playing the Tracer, so maybe this matchup will go a little bit better this time around.
The dive on the dive. But again, Ultima Web versus Phobic. This is the matchup we need to keep an eye on. Staten Island being on this defense, having the Sombra and Chongyun, while the opportunity to scout out where everyone's located. Again, the Siren being on this high ground is going to be an issue. Instant Sleep Dart Discord onto Cammy to leap on up. Yet it's Crazy Cat, the one in the kill feed. He'll take those trades every day of the week. Staten Island identifying where SNHU were electing to push, even if they gave them a lot of room to work, showed great skill in counteracting their dive.
Yeah, this is looking a lot cleaner so far. It's only been one fight, so I don't want to hype it up too much, but I think for a map like this, where there's a cart, where you're not just running at each other consistently, this is where Staten Island could really take control of things. Control can be a little bit more dicey with constantly fighting over the same objective, but as a defender, you can have this high ground control so much more easily at the beginning of the map, but Chongyun gets caught out trying to translocate out. That is disastrous.
And that rock's just a little bit too tall, and suddenly door wide open. SNHU starting to assault the high ground. Rips are in trouble. It's the supports keeping each other alive, and they can do that for themselves, yet who's there to give that help to Cammy, to Phobic, and the rest of the team? So while the two in the back may stand, no one is in the front, preventing this capture to go through. It's a pulse bomb in, essentially guaranteeing a completion of her first objective payload. About is in the wall.
I feel like I cast or cursed this so badly. This fight is still
Nano?
going on. And Nano was committed, onto Cammy. In the meantime, Helios forced to use their Primal Raid, so an ult for an ult. But all the while, that progress, like you said, it's been finalized. That first point's been captured by Southern New Hampshire. And I feel like even if you get some eliminations here at Staten Island, the objective's already been lost. The cart is already moving along. And really, you got to play for this high ground. You got to take this back. And it looks like eventually they will. It all goes wrong. It all falls apart. What looks so good as that first point defense, just one translocator being thrown. Looks like it got stuck on a wall, and that was the end of that defense. So now they got to restabilize and find ways to make this Sombra work, because Chongyun only at 66% towards this EMP.
They're gonna try to make the Sombra work here. I mean, that's a ton of damage. The Virus onto the Zenyatta, and that does turn a couple of heads. Even trades either way, yet it's Phobic coming up in the kill feed on the Tracer, already outperforming Ultima in that regard, allowing for some stability on Staten Island's side, which they as much need here. Losing a couple of their players, going to hurt in the long run. Helios ended up getting slept up and able to move back on down. Yet the space isn't really being controlled here, Jag. It feels very sloppy. Staten Island are just chucking whatever they can manage to find at the objective, hoping for the best. And yeah, you can force the Transcendence, but where's your Winston in the backline? How are they going to manage to get out? You're not. You're just straight up dead. Helios now needs to move away from the high ground. Siren taking the overclock to the heights. And this is just an absolute wipe of Staten Island ever since New Hampshire touched the payload.
Yeah, and that cart barely ever stopped moving throughout all that. 4.5 minutes is quite a lot of time to work with. Unfortunately for Staten Island, their most important members were some of the ones that fell early on in that fight. They had a rally online, but Rip SR gets caught out, ends up falling. Chongyun falls before that EMP can ever go off. So they do have ultimates to re-engage here, but they got to do it quickly. They're giving up so much space, and there's still so much time left for Southern New Hampshire. Staten Island has to take the fight to them before things get too out of control.
Staten Island, they've been playing reactionary this entire time, and it has not worked for 2 points. Time to switch it up for the third. Otherwise, you're going to say goodbye to your map of Blizzard World. That's one way to take the fight to them. Lights out for Helios and Kresnik. A 2-for-1 trade. And they managed to close it out, though. Rip SR rally into the backline. Extra health is guaranteed. And Ultima Wep is sent back to the spawn. Staten Island finally find some stable ground to stand on.
Finally, they take initiative. They play aggressive, like you said. Not playing reactionary is the key to them winning fights, and there they take the matter right to their opponent. But now, even after winning that fight, you can see them backing up a little bit. Kresnik uses the Nano immediately, but it's trades on trades.
Oh! The trades on trades, but neither support available on the attacker's side. Even with Helios Primal Rage, the rest of your team isn't going to last long at all and are ideally just going to wait for Kresnik and Crazy Cat to return.
I gotta say, Phobic has been much better in this duel against Altaweb, unfortunately, than Bioactive. Bioactive on this Alta has been absolutely incredible too, getting some really nice bio nades that have made it impossible for SNHU to do anything.
Bioactive nades have been working out incredibly well, especially to save players like Cammy, but not in this case. It'll be Kresnik who lands one first, sealing the fate of the Winston and Chang'an, falling once again. Staten Island, they're starting to crumble under the pressure. SNHU, once they find a small weakness in the armor, they proceed to drive that spear straight in and take down the entirety of the team, now rounding the final corner.
I'd really like to see them swap off the Sombra. I had actually suggested it early on, but it's just not finding value. I feel like a big part of Sombra's kit is you need to hack the health packs to try to get all that healing for yourself. But at least for this fight, it looks like they're winning out.
Well, they're trying to. They're not good yet, though. I mean, Chang'an ends up dying. They lost their tank so early. There was no one to contest the cart. Now it's up to the good old Rama to get her legs break before she can even make it. And now, I mean, SNHU, that's 2 minutes plus some on a full cap. And Staten Island, they just didn't make the changes that were necessary throughout that entire defense period.
And 2 minutes and 9 seconds might not feel like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but that is a lot of time to work with, especially if we go to extra rounds. That is a lot of time specifically for that first point to go after. So a very nice time bank from SNHU. They did stumble just a little bit here and there on this third point. The biggest thing is I feel like they never really swapped up their game. They knew that they could take the fight to Staten Island, and Staten Island, while they did have their moments where they were able to push tempo of their own, usually they were playing reactionary, usually they couldn't react quick enough, and usually it ended up with them falling. I want to go back to that Sombra point I was talking about before that final fight happened. In a nutshell, this Sombra can work, but the problem is I feel like the positioning from Chang'an hasn't been optimal to make it work. Usually you want to play around hacked health packs. You always want to have a getaway plan, always like an avenue of escape where you can just chuck your translocator in the air and you're home free. And also you want to have follow-up when you get those hacks, when you get those viruses landed. You want your tank to dive in, you want your tracer to be there to get that follow-up damage to secure that elimination. Unfortunately, we only saw a number of those things come together hand in hand less times than I can count. You know, it's not like a lot, and that's the problem. If they can execute it to perfection, it can work, but if not, I really want to see them swap things up on attack.
I mean, they're going to stick with the Sombra here. Chang'an's job is a bit easier on the attack, you could argue. Just translocating back into the middle of your team without having to worry as much about your opponents pushing on in. But you need to be cautious of just where you're positioning yourself. Always having that escape plan, like you said, Jag. It's Staten Island. I mean, look how much poke stems are taking on the way in. It's just for Siren hammering these shots through. They're waiting too long to push. SNHU's like, fine, we're going to go ahead and jump on you instead. They all have to back off with all of their cooldowns down the drain.
And they just don't have any upfront damage. I mean, you've got Phobic on the Tracer who can do quite a bit of damage if they're right in your face, but the Sombra really has to wait in the shadows, and meanwhile, it's just SNHU jumping straight on them.
They're going to try to put pressure on Osiris. You really can't push Cassidy by yourself, but Cammy just found out firsthand, and you know, with that main point crumbling, the rest of your team, yeah, you're going to have to go for a full reset. Staten Island don't seem to have a clear idea of how to approach SNHU yet.
I'd love to see a Reaper here. I think a Reaper could be a great counter for Staten Island. It would make SNHU have to play a lot more safe. They can't just run in because Reaper is a tank buster and could immediately just clobber your Winston. Maybe even a Cassidy to mirror the Cassidy. But yeah, you can see Osiris has just had a free-firing turret range and just takes out Cammy.
Like, this guy doesn't get hit with a single bullet. Has a Deadeye on up, takes care of another first elimination. I mean, Staten Island, you're not playing close. You don't have the range game. You got to switch something up, and Cammy seems to be on board with that.
Yeah, they're going to be going back to more of a brawl setup now.
Okay.
I do like this. I think this could work in theory. It might take a fight or two to build up some ultimates, especially you got to be careful of this pulse bomb. But the good news is that with this Baptiste, at least they will have that mortality field.
They're actually going to hold on to the immortality field. The ultimate pulse with a tad bit to the side. SNHU, though, they have plenty of those ultimates. You mentioned difficult fight for Staten Island to go ahead and win with all of those recent changes. With Phobic to go down first. Helios still looking for another one, but in fact, will be caught into that vortex A rough ending for the Winston player, SNHU. Now they're in a heap of trouble, losing Kresnik that short of a nano boost. That one's gonna hurt, especially in terms of return capabilities.
Lee's gonna be one tick going the way
Oh no!
of Staten Island. The Deadeye, it's gonna find one.
No shot. I mean, Osiren wants to try to clutch this up, getting the one. Surely that could be enough. Pulse bomb almost on the way. Ultima. Group back up. Helios. Nano boost into the backline. Doesn't care much about the amplification. Making small. Let me tell you, sure
The
did.
boost!
Release the pulse bomb. Landed your feet. Ultima Web didn't even need to stick it on anybody. They just wiped the floor clean of Staten Island.
That was a pulse bomb for the ages, Staten Island. It looks like they finally were able to get this capture with this composition swap. And while they still have time to make it happen, it is looking more and more dire as the seconds continue to dwindle. SNHU, they had to use everything besides this Transcendence, which could be what helps them get this full hold at the end of the day.
To move up, like they're losing people on the rotations. It's a trade DPS for DPS, the sound barrier. Now push this team onto the objective forcibly. Health bars incredibly low. SNHU. They're gonna look for that engagement point. They're gonna get out into bioactive, but worrying about contesting the objective. They cannot step a toe off of the point, or it is very well gone. This time, they think it's okay. Highlands, they think this is their last shot. They're pulling all of their ultimates out, just hoping for elimination. There's too much healing in the way, but they get off of the pit. No shot! This is how it shall end. SNHU had one heck of a defense. They're gonna end up winning nearly the entire fight. But here they are. The payload is on the roll because they forgot the key point of Overwatch, Jag.
It's heartbreaking. You get a play like that triple pulse bomb just to C9 the point, to get off the objective, the most important thing in this game. And that gives more life for Staten Island. This is going to be a nice adjustment, I will say, from SNHU. They're not taking their foot off the pedal. They're just spawn camping, because what else can you do? You shouldn't back up at this point. You just are going to keep taking the fight to them until you eventually lose, if you lose at all.
I mean, that's a beautiful stick. I mean, Ultima weapon, the pulse bombs. Those two words go hand on hand. Can't say the same for real gunshots to the dome, though. So SNHU have managed to lose both of their DPS players in this fight. They are still playing on the card, a wise decision, considering they're already down. But also seem to take priority in this high ground control, which is very wise. You do not want to let Kobik or Chongyun have access.
And despite the mistake of giving up the point, I think SNHU has played this brilliantly. They've killed time off the clock. Now they have the high ground, like you just said. And they have ultimate still at their disposal. This Deadeye, they got the nano boost, and they get Cammy. So everything's going their way, even despite that C9.
And no, they're not letting that hurt them at all. In fact, it seems to fuel the fire and further push them forwards. They're once again in the spawns of Staten Island, who are going to have to take one fight here, yeah, but then another one by the time they even reach the objective, Jag.
Helios is on a 10-player kill streak. They've got the nano ready to go from Kresnik if this Winston gets in trouble, and they're just going to go aggressive.
We're going to take the initiative. I mean, this is the same story we've been seeing all game long, is that SNHU, they push their buttons first, they go in, force that react, and now it's a siren on a flank angle. Yes, we'll get out alive from bioactive. Ultima Web 3 for 3 on the pulse bombs this round. And SNHU, yes, heavy investment for ultimates going into this fight, but it's not like Staten Island are getting out of this cleanly. It's the annihilation completely going to waste, and nearly 30 seconds all that remains in their attack.
And that cart moves back. No progress gain in the last minute and a half. And there's very little time, like you said. There's still ultimates for Staten Island. They could just try to overpower them, but can they even get it out of their own spawn? No, they lose their Baptiste.
I mean, Bioactive was just walking out, hoping that the team could keep him alive, but that's not the case. They need someone to clutch up. Chongyun has worked magic. That's both supports down. SNHU. This is the most vulnerable point we've seen them all round, but the payload has moved back so far, Jag. They could take at least another 2 fights here.
Yeah, this could be a bit of a spawn camp. It looks like the Tracer and the Winston have jumped out, but it's going to be trades of DPS.
The trade either way. Overtime is now rolling, so Staten Island must play on the payload. Well, 3 ultimates to do so. They must be scared. Ultimate pulse bomb on the way has been flawless with them so far, and will do so once again here. Yet onto the Ramatra, it's just like throwing a little spitball at him. Gobek though, Heiser canceled on out. Staten Island, their resources falling one by one. Chongyun, last one standing. What can he manage to find? There's one. Osiren hits the deck. looking for shots into the Winston, gets incredibly low, but no, can't find the Huddle blow. It's Helios filling up that kill feed and giving SNHU that second map win.
It's another map where, you know, you look at the final score 3-1 and you say, oh, that's not that close, but some of these fights on a knife's edge, some of them came down to some hero plays just like this one. I'm assuming this is going to be that 3K pulse. Actually, no, it's not. It's going to be at the very end. Ultimate Web cleaning up Staten Island. Still, it's a play. I'm a little disappointed it's not the one we were expecting, but it's a play, and I think Ultimate Web definitely deserves to have play of the game one way or another. I think the matchup between Ultimate Web and Phobic was a bit closer. We saw Phobic get the better of that one a little bit more, but Ultimate Web as a whole has been a star throughout the series. Again, this is why I said this is the player to look out for. They were in contenders for a reason. They have a very high skill level, and while we've seen Call to Staten Island battling back, being able to find fight wins here and there, they still cannot find these map wins overall. It was so close at certain points, but this one got away from them once again.
It did. And, you know, if you want to compare both Nepal and Blizzard World right now, Blizzard World was a much more dominant win for SNHU compared to map number 1. In terms of the way that they were playing, particularly on that defense. There wasn't really a moment where we doubted that they were out of control, unless Chungyun came out there and just clipped the heads of both supports for some reason, which that did happen on a lot of occasions, so kudos to them, but it's not enough to stop their tempo. A dive comp moves so quickly, you return to the fight, you can take multiple engagements, they're playing in the spawns, you're taking the fight first. I mean, there's so many things that they're doing right on a macro perspective that even the small wins, I'm saying wins is you're finding eliminations for CSI, don't really amount to much.
Yeah, and I think also it comes down to kind of the tempo and the pace that's being set.
Yeah.
You talked about it yourself. It looks like SNHU a lot of the time, they were the ones setting the tempo. They were the one in the driver's seat. They were the one taking the fight to CSI. And then CSI, they just were like either using ultimates really late, not using them in the right order, maybe not using them on the right targets, or they were just playing, I would say, scared. Like they were using ultimates out of fear, right? Scared that the fight was already over and they were trying to turn it around. But like, you don't want to use your annihilation when you've already lost 3 people. It's just not a good time to use it, especially against a team that, like you said, is dive. Most of these targets can run away from you. Annihilation is AoE. You have to be within a certain range for that ultimate to actually continuously do damage to the enemy team. So if you're against a Winston and a Tracer, they're out of there. You know, they're saying, hey, we're not going to be in this ultimate. Sorry, goodbye. And then Annihilation is not going to find, it's going to find even less value than if you had, you know, a full team fight potentially. But instead, using it in those situations where you should just save it for another day, just try to get eliminated as soon as possible so you can reset yourself. They're not doing that. CSI, those fundamentals that I've seen them play with that helped them win this championship for ECC last semester, they're not there right now.
This is looking like a different team. Like, if I didn't know those results beforehand, Jack, I would have guessed otherwise based on the performance today. In CSI, they're coming into this not having lost a game, not having lost a map, yet here they are down 2. And as it's progressively gone on, there's some of these more larger ideas, these fundamentals of how to function as a team that seem to be lacking, where SNHU is picking that up and kind of throwing it right back in their faces. And now here they are. You're on your final leg. You are on match point. SNHU, they can taste that first seed spot heading into those playoffs right here, right now. CSI need to show us what they have in what could be their last chance.
Before we do see that third and potentially final map, we do want to get a quick look at Helios and his stats throughout this last map. I talked a lot about Cammy and how good they were doing on the Sigma, but Helios, I mentioned this before. It looks like SNHU really liked the Winston from the VODs I had seen, and you can see why. 45 eliminations is a lot of eliminations for a Winston.
That's nothing to laugh at all. Helios, the difference between the JQ and the Winston is it's a canyon. There's a canyon in between those two characters right now. Helios did not die first a single time in that entire map. Yes, I was keeping track because Helios, you had it rough, buddy. Will not lie. Brawl comp versus brawl comp, not for you. That's fine. Okay, we're gonna get a little silly. We pull out the Winston. You play with your Tracer. You set up your DPS to poke from a far range. I mean, this is where SNHU look the most comfortable on these fast-paced or poke comps. Brawl, perhaps that's not their game, But with our next map type on the way, Jag, we know Suravasa in particular can lean a multitude of directions in terms of competition.
Honestly, I'm expecting this to be much more close than the last map. We saw that when it was on Control, both teams were just constantly fighting it out, neck and neck, super, super close overall. And Flashpoint is very similar. Very, very close quarters. Usually you're fighting on a neutral objective. Actually, you're always fighting a neutral objective unless you're going through those. I mean, sometimes you can catch teams out of rotation. I think that's the one difference of Control. You know, Control is very linear, but Flashpoint is a huge, just gargantuan of a map. So there's so many different like alleyways you can catch a team out. But as we head to the first point of Flashpoint Market, I'm very intrigued to see what comps we see. And it's going to be actually a mirror of tanks. I'm very surprised to see Helios go back to Junker Queen, but even more surprised for Cammy. I'd expect an Orisa. Cammy loves to play Orisa. Maybe this just isn't an Orisa meta for him, or he just doesn't think it's worthwhile trying to play.
And Junker Queen perhaps seeing what they were able to do to Helios back on the call. So it's part of that reasoning, motivation, even having Chungyun on the Reaper here. You have a lot more of that frontal pressure. I take that back. I'm sorry, Chungyun. I do that to you. Crazy Cat, rips your head off. Now SNHU, they are in it to win it. Noob in a lot of trouble. Now coming back in for this roster. Bioactive on this Tracer, mind you. So Staten Island, yes, they made some changes up to their roster, not only in their compositions, yet it doesn't seem to be so far in Suravasa.
Yeah, and it makes sense why they made this swap. It looks like Rip SR is their Lucio player, but it just looks like they were a bit lost on that rotation going on to the point. Staten Island, they were trying to find someone out, but you saw SNHG went the opposite way of the point, and then they got pressured back on the side of Staten Island. Now they've got to deal with this Tracer who's just on them like a hawk.
And look at Ultima right now, barely whiffing a bullet in these clips. The focus fire is impeccable. SNHU, they pick one target. As soon as it's pinged, they are as good as dead. I mean, there's just not a moment where I've seen them waver so far. Every time we've seen them take a fight, it's more and more confidence is shown each and every time. And especially on a map such as this, Jag, it's going to win you the game.
It is indeed, and I feel like Chungyun's been really struggling. The Sombra, the Reaper, just not finding much success. That the DPS really needs to get going, really needs to find something sooner or later. And again, like 3 fights, 3 deaths first.
Like that, there's not a single point where SNHU has lost a member first in this battle. It's going to secure them this first step of Market. I mean, you'll notice there, Jag, we talked a little bit about how, you know, Bioactive might not be winning those Tracer 1v1s. Yeah, you put Rep SR on it, get the rest of the team sees, okay, it's a 4v3. They win it anyways.
Yeah, and as we now go to our next flashpoint, which I believe is going to be Palace, this rotation could be really deadly if Staten Island isn't careful enough.
Oh, in fact, okay. There we go. We got one on the board. One, mark the tally for Bioactive. We'll get Ultimate out and Siren Pop Blade here. That's interesting into a sand barrier and losing 2 of your players. Hopefully we hold on to more of those ultimates moving forwards because SNHU used 2 without thinking about it much.
And it was really nicely played by the support lane of Staten Island. They used the Suzu to immediately cleanse the anti-heal that Helios gave them with the Junker Queen ultimate. And then the sound barrier is still around for that blade. So they just had so much sustain, so much ways to live through those ultimates for Staten Island. And they finally were able to win one. But now they're finding themselves in a bit of hurt.
I mean, look at them. They tried to take this fight up close and didn't really have their tank up there. That's what we have Bioactive. Yes, stick a Pulse Bomb onto Helios, give them a first-class ticket back to the spawn room. And now Bioactive is truly shining on this Tracer. Where we saw them lacking earlier in the series, they're certainly making up for it now.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Look at that headshot. It looked personal after that first map. And maybe the key to playing Tracer is just you play Ana for a map and then you swap back. The aim feels like it's much more on point. Even though they lose Noob early on, they're able to bounce back with a really nice pulse bomb and just really some nice finishing blows. And it's like night and day right now for Staten Island. They lose that first point 100-0. Now they might win the second one 100-0 themselves.
This is dominant. As soon as we say that, Ultima Whip back in the game. I'm so sorry. I've been doing this to the DPS of Staten Island all day long. Oh, SNHU. Yeah, they're going to get that flip back over. Only the stun committed, and that only had to come out after losing Helios. So they're back on the point. Chongyun out aggressive, gets staggered out. And I mean, this is just even better for SNHU, these late kills.
The fact that they captured the point before the fight actually ended, the fact that they're still getting these potential eliminations, that's just more and more time on the clock, more and more point percentage going your way. These flashpoints tick up so quickly, it's like 3 fights and it's done. That's all you get at best. Sometimes only 2 depending on the rotation or how long these fights end up taking. So Staten Island looks like they're going to capture this without any sort of resistance. They still have some ultimates to their name. I'm looking at that Death Blossom and maybe the Kitsune Rush combination. But if they don't win this one here, this might be the point going out of their favor, and it's 2-0 on this map.
Chong has to do something, but just books it the other direction. Seeing the Fox rushing towards them. It's Helios once again overextending. The punish is there. SNHU, all they need to do is prevent a touch on the objective. Deadeye being held. Progress certainly stalled. But everyone is still up and breathing until Bioactive goes down. I'm sorry, I did it again. Staten Island, I apologize for all the pain you have been caused, and potentially even more. This objective still up for grabs. Kitsune Rush, yes, it is the real clear players out of the way. They need to just get one more final blow, and it'll be Chongyun to seal the deal. Staten Island evening themselves up here on the board, hopefully, for this Flashpoint map in a turn of events, the turn of the tides that is much needed for their series.
Well, it almost went the other way, but Staten Island able to clutch up. This is super important for them. It's not only going down 0-2 on this map, but that had not gone their way to be potentially the end of the series, as they're already down 0-2 in the overall score line. And most importantly, they still have that Death Blossom. They did not use that in that fight to take back the point, so they could open up with that one here and just get a nice third point fight win and get the first capture here.
Staten Island have to make SNHU walk into them, which having this Reaper and Death Blossom can be a deadly combo, but they back off. They give SNHU room to push for some reason or another. They're gonna have to make this one a lot more scrappy than they initially wanted. Even trade either way. 3v2 right now. Staten Island currently up in terms of numbers, and all it takes is Chongyun to seal the deal. First cap going to Staten Island.
So I think we've been a little bit on the case of Staten Island for playing a bit too passive, not initiating first, but sometimes you gotta float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. That time, they have a good counter punch to be able to get the job done. They still have that Death Blossom as well as the Pulse on the ultimates they entered with that engagement with, so they still have a lot to work with potentially to be able to continue to hold on to this point.
Tools right now. Finding placement. It's going to be challenging. Bioactive looking for an opportunity. Boop on back. Still looking for the touch. Nah, not even going to pull the trigger yet. Yes, we'll get it onto the Ramatra, but at the cost of their own life. Chongyun holding on to this Death Blossom, and that's the point. Flips back over. So SNHU, yes, they are getting that percentage up on their side, but not the objective. Roll has not been SNHU's game whatsoever today. They've looked significantly weaker on it than any other point, and are now really starting to struggle here on Saravasa.
And this Ramatra swap might not be it. Sure, they do have support ultimates to help them get in, but unless you're in your Nemesis form just pummeling people into the ground, that Ramatra poke just doesn't do nearly as much. They have to find their way back in playing aggressively, and they're going to do it using the Kitsune Rush.
Yeah, Kitsune Rush will certainly knock down the gates, send Staten Hill running for cover. But they're okay with this. They're playing at their own tempo, at their own pace. Look at the tools they have to re-engage with. They have 4 ultimates. All they need is to win the next battle. And they're going to be up on map point. Speed amp on in, is sorted with Chongyun's Blossom of Death, and it's going to grab 2, making a third for the Reaper player. Staten Island are stepping up their game here, and Saravasa being on their last life. They sure know it. That's going to be the flip back over. SNHU will not get a final Sand Gardens.
I swear these players can hear us sometimes, because I was saying, Chongyun, you gotta step it up. 15-player kill streak. Yeah, that is stepping it up right there. Taking Garden, and now you are in the lead on Flashpoint, on Saravasa. In the lead, really, for the first time in this series. They've been playing down the entire time on each map in the series as a whole, and this could be the start of a reverse sweep. But first, they've got to clinch out, which could be this final Flashpoint here. And they still have ultimates to work with. That's the big thing. Pulsarm already almost back in their pocket. They got the Jungle Queen Rampage, Kitsune Rush, Sound Barrier. There's so many tools to work with. Staten Island, they've been playing at the beat of their own drum. Now they got to bring it home.
That's not to say, though, that SNHU are going to return with a marching song of their own. 4 ultimates on their side, which triggers are going to be cold first. It is SNHU, and that's 3 of them to be exact. Kevin wants to even the tables with the Rampage. Goes down mid-cast. Oh no! Tragedy strikes for Staten Island. SNHU, they got to the objective, had the faster rotation, and it's going to help them get their first capture.
I don't know if they heard the Deadeye and all of that. I actually struggled hearing the Deadeye as well. But, you know, I'm not playing the game, so I can see what's on my screen. I saw through Camus POV the Cassie just standing there menacingly, and unfortunately they end up falling when the Deadeye is cast. Again, ultimates being used when they probably should just save them for another fight, and now they're going to be on the outside looking in. Good news, though, still, they have a sound barrier that they could try to engage with, and there it is.
They're going to push on in, answered with the Kitsune Rush. Faster cooldowns versus external health. Several players especially low, but the one that doesn't have health is Cammy. Helios is getting dangerously close to losing their life as well, but Siren just chilling in the backline was not touched throughout that entire engagement. SNHU know how to keep them alive, and now Staten Island are going to have to scramble for a contest.
I don't know if they can get there in time. It's going to be very, very close. Honestly, you might just want to give this one up and go for the next point, but instead, they're going to run right into the firing of everyone, and that's a nice pulse bomb.
Yeah, that's the pulse bomb. Yeah, you're going to get the touch, but what win condition are you realistically working with right now? Would have liked to see Staten Island go for the rotate, like you said, but at least the spawns that they'll manage to grab will help them move towards that next objective, unless it is the one neighboring the current one, which I believe is called Temple.
Temple, yeah.
Yes.
And that's the thing, like, knowing this is the last flashpoint, you have to know where that last one is. There's no other options on the map anymore. But instead, they try to go for that last second contest. It loses them a lot of time. It loses them, or they give up their ult charge to the other team. And now they are on the outside looking and trying to get onto this last flashpoint.
Yeah, but they're doing it. They're taking out their rage, turning Helios into a punching bag, and Osiris are like, hey, leave my take alone, go away. That's the DPS down, followed by Cammy. Back to the spawns. I mean, SNHU, after they're losing those 2 flashpoints, they're like, all right, guys, we got to group up. We got to take this seriously. And here they are, once again, starting out with an advantage.
The reverse sweep dream for Staten Island is looking bleaker and bleaker as that first point, or the 5th point capture, first capture of the 5th point. I'm trying to figure this all out in my head. There's a lot of words. Goes to SNHU. A lot of them, and none of the bad ones, though. But the big thing is that SNHU still has now the Annihilation, and this pulse bomb is also locked and loaded for Ultimate, who's on the back line.
But Helios had to use that so early just to stay alive, and Staten Island sound barrier, yes, in response. They're gonna back off, try to kite away from the ultimate, which Helios is managing to get this to grasp a lot longer than it arguably should have. This is the fight that Staten Island wanted to take. They have those 4 ultimates, but it's SNHU. All it takes is a Kitsune Rush. They march on forward. Cammy gets sent off the objective, and just like that, they're gonna close out this battle. Staten Island, they didn't even have a chance to decide what to do.
Yeah, so many choices for Staten Island, but none of them are made besides the sound barrier. They could have had an entire ult apocalypse going into potentially the last fight. They still have 4, but this is the time they have to play quickly. They gotta get there, and they gotta use them. They gotta press Q. No, not all at once. Like, I think the Death Blossom right away would be great. If they lose their Kiriko, there's no Kitsune Rush!
Oh, but Kresnik also overextended, so it is even. Yes! Has neither support available. Cammy has to make magic happen, but no! It's not gonna hit anybody at all! Chugga now! The last chance, and they can't make it. The mark Staten Island gets the flip, yes, but it's just a lonely Bioactive who's beaten down into a pulp. SNHU, final flip back on over. A player from Staten Island's not in sight. They repeated themselves, getting their revenge on Staten Island. This is the team that wants to win the championship, and they just sent a message to the former.
Just disaster at the end for Staten Island. They have all the ultimates in the world to work with. You can't actually use them if you're not alive to tell the tale. And that Rampage, I think it just hit the wall. I'm not sure how it didn't hit members of SNHU, but that could have been what saves you. Maybe, I think actually it might have been that there was a Suzu thrown out at the same time. I think that might have been it. So if that's what it was, a great play from the Kiriko on the side of Southern New Hampshire to save their team, help them get across the finish line, win that final fight. And again, it's another map where I don't feel like the scoreline tells the final story. A 3-2 looks very close, but it's even closer than that, I feel like. This whole series, besides Blizzard World, overall, was just incredibly, incredibly close. And again, it's not necessarily about who plays better. Sometimes it's about who makes less mistakes. In SNHU, when they saw CSI make those mistakes, they capitalized them, they took advantage of them, and they won out those fights.
I hate to sound like a broken record here, but the reason they're finding these mistakes is because they're acting first. They're like hawks. They're sitting from above. They're watching for somebody to be out of position to find that little extra chip damage, maybe a headshot from Osiren or a pulse bomb, an extra clip that's thrown in there. And they move in, right? They move in, and then suddenly your opponents, they're confused. Yes, sometimes they're able to counteract it. They can kite off successfully and come back in on their own terms. When it works, it's great. CSI, that's where they've been looking the strongest. However, it doesn't work nearly even close to as often as Southern New Hampshire were able to pull it off themselves and will end up winning the day as a result. Jag, despite these new players coming in to this New Hampshire roster, I mean, you have to be impressed with the synergy and teamwork they showcased today.
Whenever you see a clear team with players that have Wikipedia pages, that's when I get scared. You know, that's when I'm like, oh no, like, this team is legit. And while not all of those players, have been through tier 2, that experience, it shows. Ultimate Weapon looked absolutely phenomenal. And with that win, we mentioned this a few times, like this was essentially for first place in the ECC going into playoffs. Now there is one more week of regular season play, but as these were the 2 last undefeated teams and every other team is at least had 2 losses on their record, it's looking pretty good for SNHU to go in number 1 seed. We talk about revenge. CSI, they were the champions from last season. They beat SNHU, but again, this was not the same roster. This was a new roster, a second team. The old roster is competing in ECC as SNHU Pearl, who are currently at 3-2. So they're still doing pretty good, but, not at the same place as this Sapphire roster. And now the Sapphire roster are in the driver's seat. I can't imagine them losing, their last game of the season and somehow dropping into a lower seeding than first.
And absolutely not. I mean, CSI right now, they're not a bad team. That's a point we need to make very clear.
It's very good.
They had so many strong points throughout the evening, whether it was individual skill on the Sojourn with these tanks when they're taking space, or these overall team collapses, this focus fire. Their team that is plenty of room to improve, yes, but still one of the top nonetheless, and we'll not be surprised if these two will see each other later down the line as our playoffs get closer and closer. And while we might concluding our match for today, the action here on the broadcast is still far from over. We're going to go ahead and get an interview set up for Southern New Hampshire in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. We'll see you back here in just a bit. What a series we had here today in the ECC. We started off our stream talking about how these two squads, SNHU and CSI, are the two undefeated teams within this tournament. And now there's only one that remains, and that is SNHU with a dominant 3-0 performance. Oh, actually, not really dominant. It was close down to the wire at a lot of points. A big leader, though, to help give SNHU the lead was our good DPS buddy, Siren, joining us here for an interview. Talk me through, how are you feeling after taking down a team such as CSI?
We feel pretty good. We feel like it could have been a lot better on our side. A lot of mistakes that we want to iron out for future weeks. We just recently swapped to this, so me and Kresnik swap roles as of this week. So I'm still learning my role. He's still learning his, but it's something that we're really really fortunate that we have such great players and such that we're always able to help each other out and get towards that win today.
See, we would never have guessed that had you not told us here today. I mean, you were an absolute natural on the Cassidy. We watched you for about a minute straight, just hammering shots into the Winston there. And I do kind of want to ask about the style of play that we saw from your team today. You showed us a couple of different looks, including the Winston and some of these more brawl comps. Is the dive kind of something you tend to lean more heavily into? Does it look to be your strongest, or is that kind of a newer addition amongst other things?
I think it's mostly map dependent for us. I think especially dive. We love to play it. We love it when it's going like that. But especially some of the top teams that we play against, they're so well coordinated. And dive, it's not the thing we played always. But brawl, we always love to go to. We're able to surround teams and find different resource trades that help us win those fights. I think especially on Saravasa, there was a lot of times that we got scary, but as soon as we locked down and we were able to, call win conditions and realize what we were seeing, the game felt a lot slower and we were able to make a lot more informed decisions towards the back half of that.
Well, you made a lot of great decisions overall to help you get the 3-0 win. First of all, I want to say I love the Red Sox hat. I'm from Boston myself. But secondly, I got to ask, Kresnik, you just mentioned you guys swapped roles, but what is it like playing with Kresnik? One of the older players in the Overwatch scene in terms of was there at the very beginning, is a player coach for you guys. What is that like?
I really liked playing with Krez. We've been together about like 3 years now. He's also my boss for social media and stuff like that. I really respect him and all that he does, especially in game. He's a very big leader in comms. He's a shining example of how we should act as players. Someone that's been in the scene a while. You want to be able to stay friendly towards other teams and all do stuff like that. And Krez is able to show by shining example how we should treat others in our space. And also as well with play and mentality, I've come a long way since freshman year, and it's all thanks to Krez, and I cannot thank him enough.
You love to hear it. It's going to be nothing but swift destruction to your opponents in the server, but out of it, nothing but respect. That's what we love to see. I got to ask, this series, as we said, like on paper, 3-0 looks pretty dominant. You said yourself, you guys probably made some mistakes you didn't want to. Let's go back to Nepal. On that first sub map, there were some crazy fights that you guys were able to stall out and then eventually win. Can you kind of talk me through how you guys were able to pull that one out? Was it the comms? Was it kind of setting things up ahead of time? How were you able to win those fights despite being down a member at the very beginning?
I think a lot of the times, we were very communicative of who was touching point a lot of the time, and so that allowed us to surround the enemy team when they were stacking on point or they were playing off point. Like specifically, that was my first time playing Ashe in a couple months, honestly. I wanted to try it out. It didn't work out as well as I thought. But being able to either hit the Kiri with 1 or 2 shots so she has to peek away, and then you go onto the Sigma or good target focus. I really thank Crazy Cat for allowing me to keep me up and allowing me to play the position as long as I could, and as well as Kresnik and Ultima keeping in Horseshoe, making sure they can stay back there as well. That helped out a ton. Good communication. Good positioning. Yeah, fundamentals.
mean, the fundamentals were certainly strong amongst you guys today, and, you know, this sets you up so well for the postseason that's slowly starting to creep up onto us. There's only one more week of regular season competition before that kicks off, and you guys have essentially guaranteed yourself that #1 seed. And, you know, considering last year, your team, you made it to those finals, right? You played against CSI, you ended up losing, and now you're taking them down here once again. I mean, kind of talk me through how that really feels, how that sets the tone for your squad moving forwards through the remainder of the postseason.
We're excited, at least the opportunity to you know, play against these teams on land, hopefully, especially we play against like Northwood and stuff like that. We played against Northwood yesterday, so I don't know. Also, it was our B team playing last semester, but we signed up both teams this semester. We want to give the B team their time last semester, try to have them finish it out and try to come up. But I think the A team is well equipped to take this home all the way.
Hey, we love to hear that vote of confidence from you guys, and it is well deserved after your matchup here today. We're going to go ahead and let you go back to your team. Go ahead and celebrate that win, continuing your undefeated streak. It's a pleasure to talk with you here on the desk, Siren, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. You guys as well.
Thank you. I mean, Jag, wow. I mean, you love to hear it from these players. You worded it yourself so well. I'm going to let you say it again, but, like, the competition on the outside, yes, it is fierce, but being friendly, having this line of support on this inside of the team, that's what makes some of these opponents so strong.
Yeah, and it's just the energy you could see Osiren bring, you know, even with a win like that, it's not cockiness, you know, it's confidence, but it's respect as well. Like, they feel that they are well equipped to take on the opponents in the ECC, but they're not saying, hey, like, these people are bad. Like, they really understand how to, like, balance just, like, being a good person and being a good player. And that's the kind of thing that I love to see as a caster.
Yeah, you see it all around, both on stage and off. So teams like this, these are the ones that really start to shine, and the ones that, you know, you're like, I want to follow these guys. I want to give them supports, and you guys should as well. So we still have plenty of action left to go for the Overwatch season. Even if there's only one more week in regulars, post still yet to come. And we're not even done with the stream here tonight. So while we may be ending the cast for now, we will be picking it up in just a little bit at 8 p.m. Eastern for our League of Legends game of the evening. So go ahead, give the Esports U a channel for a follow so you don't miss on any of this further collegiate action. Thank you so much for coming out to support Overwatch this evening, and we'll see you back in just a little bit for some League of Legends.